Hello, writers. Today, we're going to make some decisions about our writing. We're going to think about what we want to say and who we want to say it to. Making these decisions will guide how we write. They'll influence the words that we use, the pictures that we select, and how we organize our writing. Today, we're going to explore how writers determine their purpose for writing and who their audience will be. Let's use Jean Craighead George's book, The Everglades, with paintings by Wendell Miner. Jean Craighead George writes this dedication for the endangered ecosystems across our land and for our national parks and to the children who are helping to save them. And our illustrator, Wendell Miner, says, to Marjorie Stoneham Douglas, whose pioneer spirit helped preserve what remains of the river of grass. She's a very interesting person. If you don't know Marjorie Stoneham Douglas, she would be a good biography to read if you're interested in nature. So I love the paintings in this book. I'll put it on the illustration side. The storyteller pulled the children under arching trees into a sunny water glade. He sat down and leaned toward them. I am going to tell you a story, he said. It is not a story about a person or a mythical creature. It is not even a story about an animal. The children looked at each other and waited. It is a story about a river. He swung his arms in a wide circle. This river, the miraculous Everglades of Florida. My story will be different from any that you have ever heard, because this river is like no other river on earth. There is only one Everglades. The children leaned forward. He began. So, the audience for this book, do you think it's grown-ups or children? I think it's children. And that's because this might be a book that begins like a story. And we generally usually read stories to children. If it had been written for grown-ups, it might be more of a reference book, or it might have had photographs instead of paintings. Thinking about our audience is very important in the way that we write something. We write differently for different people. Let's keep reading. Does this look like a place you would like to travel? First, there was sunshine on a blue-green sea. It was the ages of seashells. The seashells formed on a rock called limestone on the sea bottom. Over the eons, the sea lowered, and the rock became land. The long Florida peninsula took shape in warm, sunny waters. Purple clouds, flashing with lightning, roiled and boomed above the land. Rain gushed from storm clouds in summer. Sun bathed the land in winter. Moss grew, then ferns, then grass and trees. The rain eroded holes in the soft limestone and filled them with water. Florida glistened with green land and blue-green lakes. So when I read this page, I'm thinking about all the description that she uses, but I'm also thinking about all the facts that I've learned. So I can definitely see, even though it's a literary text, that there was some research done. I know what kind of rock that we would find in Florida. I know how the rock formed from seashells. I know a little bit about the weather and the climate. The grass prospered when the winds blew. I can't talk. When the winds blew, the sawgrass clattered like a trillion swords. Each sword was edged with cutting spines. Of the larger animals, only the leathery alligator could walk unharmed through the terrible spears of sawgrass. Around the stems of the grass scurried the young of insects and tiny crabs and snails. Little fish found these to be exciting, excellent eating. Turtles and alligators found the fish to be excellent eating. Every wild thing ate well, and there was still an enormous abundance. To the abundance came the birds. Clouds of lacy white egrets made their home in the Everglades. So I definitely see that circle of life evidence in this text, kind of like that producers and consumers passage that we read if you're in the A group, and that you will read if you're in the B group. So we have, the animals depend upon each other. So that evidence of research. I also know what animals I would find and a plant that I would find in the Everglades. So even though this is a story, I'm still getting the evidence of things that Craighead George had to research. So we read about the birds. A multitude of panthers, raccoons, deer, and otter came to the river. They made their homes on the beautiful islands. A plenitude of orchids bloomed and turned the island trees into colorful cathedral windows. So I love this figurative language right there. He's comparing the orchids, these flowers, to cathedral windows. How are flowers like colorful cathedral windows? That's right. The windows would be made of colored glass, and the orchids have very colorful petals. The plethora of lizards and anoles clamored over the orchids, and 2,000 kinds of plants, including palms, vines, and bushes, grasses, and trees. When all were in one place, the Everglades was a living kaleidoscope of color and beauty. Another good metaphor about the colorfulness. It glittered with orchids, grass, trees, birds, panthers, raccoons, snakes, mosquitoes, fish, all things large and small that make the earth beautiful. So she could have easily written a reference book that had paragraphs and text features that told about the plants and animals that live. Instead, she chose to use figurative language, and she chose to have a storyteller tell the story of the Everglades. Now that's some color right there. All those birds in a rainbow, all our animals, our plants. The storyteller paused. The children looked around and pondered. The storyteller went on. When the Everglades was perfect, people who called themselves Calusas arrived. They lived gracefully on fish and game, and they made tools out of seashells. The Spanish conquistadors arrived, and the Calusa people disappeared. The conquistadors were afraid of the flesh-ripping grass and the roaring animals of the Everglades, and they moved on. North of Florida, European men pushed the Creek Indians out of the Carolinas. Some of them walked south until they came to the silvery Everglades. They poled deep into the sawgrass and they settled on the islands. They are the Seminole Indians, and a few of them live here today. The storyteller paused, and the children looked around. Where are the clouds of egrets? A child asked. The hunters shot them by the tens of thousands and sold their feathers to decorate women's hats. Only a few survived the slaughters. Where are the quantities of alligators? Another child asked. The hunters shot them by the acres and sold their gleaming hides to make wallets and shoes. Only a few remain. Where did the cathedral windows of orchids go? A third child asked. The orchid hunters picked gardens and gardens of them and sold them to put on ladies' dresses, and practically none can be found. Another child looked around. And where did the mammals and snails and the one-celled plants and animals go? They vanished when the engineers dug canals in the Everglades and drained the fresh water into the sea to make land. Farmers tilled the land, and business people built towns and roads upon it. Pesticides and fertilizers flowed into the river waters and poisoned the one-celled animals and plants. The snails died, the fish died, the mammals and birds died. So I'm going to stop there for a second. So what I noticed on these pages, the children are asking him questions about things that they expect to see. He's been telling them about all these things that live in the Everglades. And then they start asking, well, where are they? We don't see these things that you keep telling us about. And so that makes me think about the author's purpose. She's saying how things have changed in this one place that was once full of nature and now has changed into a place filled with men. And so we have these machines that dug canals and drained. We have farms that were created. But all of that came at a cost. I still feel like this is a book made for children because the characters in the story are asking the storyteller questions. And so we have that dialogue in there that makes me think about keeping a child's attention, because that's what kids do. When we learn something new, we ask a lot of questions. We're curious about the things that we are learning. But this is a sad story, said the fifth child. Please tell us a happy story. The storyteller picked up his pole and quietly skimmed the dugout canoe across the water and down a trail in the sawgrass. Then he sat down and told the children a new story. Five children and a storyteller poled into the Everglades. Eventually, the children grew up and ran the earth. The clouds of birds returned to an abundance of fish in the water. The flowers tumbled into bloom. Quantities of alligators bellowed through the sawgrass again, and a multitude of panthers, deer, raccoons, and otters cavorted on the islands. That's a much better story, said the children. Now pull us home quickly so we can grow up. So if we're thinking about Jean Craighead George's purpose in writing this book, what is she trying to get children to understand about our environment? She's trying to persuade us to take care of the environment. And so by telling us about all the animals and plants and how man affected their habitat, she's trying to help persuade us to protect habitats around us and even work to get those habitats back to the way they were long ago. Now let's think about your writing. For your writing, you may choose to inform or explain. This would be more of a reference style. You might be trying to convince or persuade. So some of your topics like crafting or some of your sports topics or your gaming topics, you're trying to persuade someone to play or do the activity that you're doing. Some of you are writing about environments like the rainforest. And so that might be a good way to persuade other children to help protect, or other people, it doesn't have to be children, but to protect the environment. Another thing you could do would be to entertain. You could tell a funny story about space, kind of like our author that did the How to Get to Space, if you take a trip to the moon. This story was pretty emotional too for me, telling the story of something that is kind of lost or destroyed. That's emotional to me. I don't want to think about animals and plants losing their homes. So you might be writing a story that would be kind of a sad story about your topic. Like, I know somebody's doing ocean pollution, so you might want to do one that helps your reader feel emotional. Maybe you want your reader to get mad about pollution. Maybe you want your reader to think about stopping pollution immediately. Okay. Um, you might be doing your writing to share a personal experience. So this would also go to maybe somebody who's writing about a friend who's writing about cancer and how that's affected her family. And then it might be about the Cape Fear River. Maybe you spend a lot of time on the river or oceans or with your family fishing and hunting. We've got a couple of those. Oh, there's a topic about cats that are blind. So maybe this is related to your personal experience. The travel soccer one would be a good one, or playing Legos would be a good one for sharing your personal experiences. Doesn't have to be, if I'm saying your topic, doesn't have to be connected to that. You decide what you like. You might be teaching somebody how to do something, maybe how to cheer, how to play football, um, maybe how to play with the Oculus, how to grow a flower, how to plant seeds for a garden, what to do if you go on a trip to Boone, North Carolina. You might be trying to report findings or discoveries. So, a lot of you are writing stories about space or the moon. And so, that might be you're reporting about discoveries that other people have made. Um, and the last one is to inspire others to do something or believe something. And so, maybe you're going to do yours about topics like, I'm looking, inspire others to do or believe something. Maybe some of our history would be good here because we want to not repeat the mistakes of the past. And so some of our stories about war or Black history, or what to do with in disasters. We have a couple disaster ones. So yeah, so we want to inspire others to do something or believe something. And some of your topics, they might be in 2 or 3 categories. The other thing I want you to think about today is the way you're going to write your book. Are you going to do more of a reference style? Or are you going to do a more of a literary style? And I am taking biography off the table. So reference or literary. And that's just because in 3rd and 5th, you've already done those biographies. I did tell a few people that if there is a person connected to your topic, like Jane Goodall's connected to the chimpanzees, or if there's a certain guy who really works with sharks or works with a sport, or like Victoria's nailed it. She has a girl that's really an inspiration for her with her topic. So part of your story could be about that person that's an inspiration, but maybe you have that person telling the story, kind of like in our Everglades book. Instead of a storyteller, you have this person, this real person telling your story, telling your audience the story of your topic. Okay, so, or you could do a reference style, which would be more of the inform or explain, or the sharing the personal experience, or the teaching, or the reporting findings. So think about the style of book that you're going to do, reference or literary. And then finally, I want you to think about that audience a little bit. Mainly, we write our books for children, but are you going to write it for little children or children about your age? And we have this in our assignment. You don't have to answer all these questions. These are just questions to guide your thinking. So think about, are you writing for older children or younger children? Why do you want to write for that audience? Do little kids need to know more about this, or do kids your age need to know about this? Why do you want to write to that audience? Okay, think about ways that you're going to write to that audience. This might go with that literary or that reference. And finally, think about your purpose for writing. Which one of these are you going to be using for your purpose? And the last question is, why is your topic important for people to know about? Why do we want readers to know about these topics? So in the private comments, this is the question I want you to answer. Okay? So private comment. Tell me who your audience will be. Tell me, what is your purpose? And what style, literary or reference? Okay, so 3 questions in the comments. Who is your audience? What is your purpose? And what style are you going to do? So for style, you're thinking reference style or literary style. I would like this to be a detailed answer. So for all of these, this is going to be a long private comment. I want you to think about why. Kind of explain your answer. So that might connect some of these questions together. So a sample answer might sound like, I am going to choose a literary style because I want to write for younger children to inform or explain and share my personal experience about my trip to Florida and swimming with the manatees. Okay? So you can have one private comment that answers all of these together. It needs to be a lengthy comment, not just a 1-word, 2-word, 3-word answer. Okay? Think about that. If you have any questions about writing, make sure you make a private comment. I probably will have some time to Zoom tomorrow if you need some extra help with that. My A group students, please work on your research and collecting as much information about your topic as you can. B students, or if you're, I did that wrong. My B students have been home collecting research. So you guys make sure that you have as much information as you can about your topic. Keep researching everything you need to know. Okay? We're going to use that for our drafting. A students, you guys are going to do that Thursday and Friday, and I'll probably ask you to do a little bit during the weekend so that you're ready for Monday and doing your data, collecting your research information. Okay? All right. If you have any questions, make sure you reach out and ask me. I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.